Welcome back to Fox 32 Sunday. Our guest this morning is State Representative Ron Sandack, a Republican from Downers Grove, who's also a practicing attorney with the Chicago law firm of Guido and Finson. A legal question, counsel. Does the current state budget comply with the Illinois Constitution's requirement that it be balanced?
It does not. It hasn't since I've been in the General Assembly. It's decidedly unbalanced. Of course, with some machinations and a couple of tricks and winks and nods, someone will argue that it's balanced, but it's decidedly unbalanced.
And among the tricks, they just say, hey, we're not going to pay all the bills. Right. We're going to let the stack of unpaid bills get bigger and bigger. And every year, I mean, we've had this multi-billion-dollar stack of unpaid bills. They've raised the projected revenue. And they've done some other things. So why doesn't somebody go to court and say, hey, it's not balanced?
Someone has to fund that litigation, and I don't know that it would be a worthwhile endeavor for an outside group to do that, but I'd certainly love to assist anyone that would think there's merit and something that would be furthered by doing that.
Once again, in defense of Governor Quinn and some of his allies, he did propose that the Illinois income tax current 5% rate, scheduled to fall back to 3.75 on New Year's Day, that's coming up. He proposed that be made permanent, and that would be about $1.7 billion in additional revenue. You know, the General Assembly, perhaps on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, by not voting on that, was gutless.
Well, there's certainly an argument to be said there. Of course, on my side of the aisle, we fought it tooth and nail throughout the last legislative session. Remember, Mike, the governor also promised, just like Speaker Madigan and President Cullerton, that temporary increase would be temporary, and it was supposed to pay down bills. The state was supposed to right size. It was supposed to become prudent and use tax money more prudently and in a better fashion, and then it would no longer be needed, and so it would simply go away.
Fair enough. So you favor having the income tax on January 1st fall back to 3.75%?
Yes.
All right. So we've already got, so that's got like a $4 billion hole in the budget then. Where do you cut?
Well,
I mean, seriously.
Absolutely seriously. We've never, in my almost 4 years in the General Assembly, ever looked at the other side of the ledger. We always look at revenue as if, oh gosh, we're short. We have to raise revenue. We've never done anything to look at the spending side.
You could abolish the entire Department of Corrections, close every prison in the state of Illinois.
That's not a good thing to do, but you're right.
And you still don't fill that hole.
Here's what we know, Mike. We know that there are instances, we just talked about the Neighborhood Recovery Initiative. We know that there is fraud, waste, and abuse that we're not even talking about. Look at Medicaid.
All right, so there's $20 million. So NRI's successor has about $20 million in the Department of Labor,
It
right?
does.
All right, so, all right. That gets us about 1% of the, 0.5% of the way there.
Mike, you know, because we did 2 years ago the SMART Act for Medicaid, and that was supposed to be put into place, safeguards to make that system utilized only for those folks that qualified. You know, we have folks.
I think Bruce Rauner is saying maybe $500 million, $500 million, $250 million.
We were on our way to finding real savings there when the plug was pulled on that.
That leaves us again still about 85% of the whole. So where does the rest of it come from?
Well, first of all, we just did a 30-second endeavor into the budget. There is so much more to be looked at. Each and every department needs to be scrutinized. We've never done that. Simply saying, give us the same amount of money as last year has happened year after year. And we know we're not getting value out of state government. We know it's grown. Every year the pension liabilities increase, Medicaid liabilities increase.
Now, Governor Quinn's the first governor in decades to make the full payment required that actuaries say is needed.
Well, it happened at the legislature, and we gave him the full payment, and that was only because we couldn't do any more tricks. We couldn't borrow against it. As you know, we have the worst credit score or credit worthiness of any state in the union.
Right. And
so we can't borrow anymore.
Moody's is saying because of that Supreme Court ruling on, regarding public employees and their retirement rights, the outlook is now negative. They think it looks like we may see the pension reform bill thumbs down by the Supreme Court.
Right. They're making a bet.
All right, so if that happens, that makes things even that much worse.
It does. And it requires that we not do the same thing we've done in the past, which is bury our head in the sand and expect things to get better.
But Ron, here's my question. We need to abolish whole departments if we're going to be cutting $4 billion.
There are instances within whole departments where we can absolutely stop using certain services of state government.
Give me two.
Department of Aging. You ever heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Okay, you know what it does?
It takes care of the elderly.
It really doesn't, okay? But there are instances almost within innumerable functions of government where there are layers of duplicative services, where there are employees that we don't need, and there are services that we could live without.
Should Bruce Rauner disclose his full income tax return? Let's get the schedules. I mean, this is not a guy who's made a couple $100,000 or a few, or even a few
Mike,
million.
I don't understand.
$53 million in 1 year. Should we see the whole return?
He's a successful guy. He's not a silver spoon person who was, you know, given his wealth. He earned it, and he's
There's
given.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So
if you hear people talk about it, and I think the governor's guilty of this class warfare thing, a successful person from the private sector who pays more in taxes than most of us could ever dream of making, who gives away more in philanthropical giving that most of us could actually make, now has to disclose every iota of his life. I just find that a little...
The governor says he hasn't paid Medicare and hasn't paid Social Security.
Because the governor doesn't know the difference between passive and active income. Because he's in the public sector all the time, he doesn't know that many of us who have 401ks earn a living or earn income on passive income that doesn't pay Social Security tax.
All right.
That's not a crime.
All right. Representative Sandack, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll have you back soon.